Be'ezras Hashem. Today's daf is daf Tzadik Zayin, and we're going to begin from daf Tzadik Vav Amid Beis. Let's make it big. Okay. The Gemara starts from, let's say, about a little bit more than a third down the page. So Gemara says like this: Boya Rami Bachama. Rami Bachama asked the question, and his question is like this: we know that a husband, when his wife inherits money, he has a right to use that product. Let's say his wife inherits a cow. So really the cow belongs to the wife, but the husband has a right to milk the cow. So, but what happens if amongst the things that his wife inherited, let's say was something that belonged to the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, the father of the wife made something holy, and he died, and now there's like money of Hegdish that now the wife inherits. But when the wife inherits it, automatically, the husband has a right to use it. So the Hegdish is once you use something that belonged to Hegdish, the Kedusha on that item goes away. And there, the person that took the item out of Hegdish violated the Isser of Me'ilah. So the Gemara asks the question: Baal b'nichsei ishtoi mi mo'al. A husband, when he now inherits this money, and he doesn't know. Let's say she when she got married, possessions fell from her father's house when she got married, and let's say there's money of Hegdish there, and we don't know there's Hegdish. And Rabbanon says the husband that money now belongs to the husband. He can use that money and buy something and benefit from the fruits of what he purchased. So now, all of a sudden, he uses that money, and the money now goes out from the value of Hegdish. So who violated the Be'ilah? Omar Rava, man limo. Who should violate the Be'ilah? Limo Baal. Should the husband be the one that violated the Me'ilah? Wait a second. He didn't do anything wrong. He just inherited his wife. He only wanted to inherit things that he was allowed to keep. Isura loy nichale lenikle, but something that's iser, he didn't want to be kinda. He didn't want to acquire. So if he didn't know it was Hegdish, he didn't want it, and had he known it was Hegdish, he would not want to take it. So therefore, he didn't violate the iser of Me'ilah. So Timel ihi, let the wife, violate the iser of Me'ilah. The husband spent the money of Hegdish that she inherited. Well, it's not her fault. She never wants her husband to have any money of hers that she inherits. She wants to keep that money. So therefore, she shouldn't be violate the Isra Mila. And then we say Ni'malu Bezdin, let the court who caused this to happen, gave the right to the husband to use the assets. Hi, Sheldon. We're on Sunday. We're just in the middle there. We're going to finish up this question and start a new sugya in about a minute.
Okay.
The Ima'alu Bezdin, so we say the Bezdin violated the Isser of Mila? Kiyav derabanan va'amru Baal lekeachava letera. When did they say that the Baal owns now the money that she inherits and he has a right to use it? Only if it's heter money. It was real money that belonged to her father and she inherited it. Liyisura loy avid rabbanan tekanta. For Isser, the rabbanan didn't make this kakana. That means that they didn't want that this should lead to a situation where the husband inherits Hegdish money and now spends it and now violates the Isser of Me'ilah. So it's not the husband. It's nobody's fault over here. It's not the Bezdin's fault. It's not the wife's fault, and it's not the husband's fault. Ella Omar Rava said like this. Really, as soon as she inherits the money stays holy. It's not that the husband has a right to use it. It's the money remains holy. But Baal Mo'al Likashyoitzi, the husband, if he happens to use the money, not knowing that it was Hegdish, he will violate the Isser of Mila. If anybody finds money on that belongs to Hegdish and uses it for non-Hegdish purposes, he violates the Isser of Mila. So again, when the wife inherits that money, there's no Me'ilah. It's still holy money. The husband had no right to use it. But if he uses it anyway without knowing that it was Hegdish, when he spends that money, then he violates the Isra of Mila. Now we go to a new sugya. Ibaylahu. We had the question, you borrow an animal. Okay, now we know, we said this many times, if the animal will die by natural causes, let's say you borrow an animal and you put it in your garage, and then overnight it dies. So then you have to, what do? You have to pay for a brand new animal. That's for sure. So the question is, the question is, let's say you use the animal, you used it, let's say, to plow your field, and now the animal lost a lot of weight. So it lost a lot of weight, and it became a weaker animal. So the question is, as a borrower, do you have to pay the lender for a new animal? So the Gemara says like this, that's strange because you borrow an animal just to use it. So why would you have to pay for it? And the Gemara goes even further. This Rav Chilkiah, who was one of the rabbis, said, from the question, we were going to infer Michlal that you will hold that if it actually dies while you're doing the work, you're going to say that the borrower is obligated to pay. Let's say he borrowed an animal to use it to plow his field, and while it's plowing the field, it plots and dies. You're going to say a borrower has to pay? Yes, a borrower has to pay if it dies of natural causes. But if you borrow an animal, and you borrow an animal to use it to plow a field, right? And the lender gives it to you, the lender must understand that if the lender gives it to you and it dies while it's plowing the field, the lender must have done some negligence over here, because he should have known that his animal cannot plow a field, or doesn't have the koyach, the energy to plow a field. So therefore, we can't hold the borrower liable to pay for an animal. So that's the point. Nema, let us say, let the borrower always say, I never borrowed an animal to put it into a jail. In other words, I borrow an animal to use it. And if it dies while I'm using it, I shouldn't be required to pay. Only if it dies of natural causes, then I have to pay. But if it dies exactly while for the purpose of what I borrowed it for, then I don't have to pay. So Rava clarified. Rava said, not only if the animal lost weight while it was doing work, the potter that the borrower is not liable to pay. And this you have to remember this. Even if the animal died while you're working with it, and then normally if the animal dies, a borrower has to pay. But here it died exactly while you were working with the animal. Nami potter. You're also not liable to pay the amalei, because the borrower will tell to the lender, Lav loik mi bechilte shilte. I didn't borrow the animal to keep it in a pen. So therefore, I borrowed it to use. Therefore, he's not held liable if it dies at that time. Says the Gemara, Hahu Gavra, there was this person, the Shol Nargo Mechavre. He borrowed a axe, okay, from his friend. Itbar, and the axe broke. Now, Asay Lakame de Rava, so they came to front of Rava. Amalei, he said, Zil Isi, Sadi de Lav Shonishbe. You have to prove, Rava said, you have to prove with witnesses that you didn't do anything wrong with the axe. In other words, you didn't use the axe to now chop a stone or something that you're not supposed to. The pater, and then you're not going to have to pay for the axe, because you borrowed the axe to use normal purposes, and you used it for normal purposes. So if the axe broke, you're not liable to pay. That's called Mesa Machamas Malacha. If there's no witnesses, and it's likely that you actually broke the axe because you misused the axe. You used it for something that you were not supposed to be using it. How do you pay? In other words, do you have to pay for a brand new axe, or do you give pieces of the axe, the broken axe, to the lender and say, here's part of your axe back, and I'll pay you the difference between the pieces that I gave you and the value of a brand new axe. So Tashma coming here from this proof. Dahu Gavra, the Shol Nagra Mechabre Vitbar. A person borrowed an axe from his friend and it broke. Also, they came to Rav. So they came in front of Rav. Amalei, so Rav said, Zil Shalom Le Nagar Mal. You have to pay for a brand new axe. You can't just give the pieces and pay the difference. You have to buy, as a borrower, you have to buy a brand new axe. Says the Gemara, Amalek Rav Kana, Ravasi the Rav. So Rav Kana and Ravasi, who are students of Rav, said to Rav, we go to Amid Aleph, Dina Hachi, is that the din that you have to pay for a brand new axe? We learned this in Masechta Baba Kama. If one animal kills another animal, we say, but you could return the carcass of the animal to its owner, and all you have to do is pay the difference between the carcass of an animal and a brand new animal. So that's called shamanes nevela. So why don't we say that the guy should be able to return the broken pieces, and the difference the borrower should pay? Why should he have to now keep the broken pieces and buy a brand new axe? V'shasik Rav. So Rav had no answer for that question. So therefore, v'hilchus Rav Kahana Bravasi, the mahadele tavro umamalile de meimona, that you return, the halacha is like Ravasi and Rav Kahana, they're students of Rav, that you return the broken pieces of the axe and you pay up the difference. Says the Gemara, Ahu Gavra, listen to this story. This is another story. The Shol Dalvo Mechavri. He borrowed let's say a pitcher from his friend, say to water plants or whatever, and it by the thing broke. Also the Kami de Rapapa. Rapapa said, Amalei Isis Sadi Deloy Shanishbe, bring proof that you didn't do anything wrong while you were using the dalvla, this watering thing, this watering vessel. And so therefore you used it in the normal fashion. So that's called Mesa Machmas Malach. It died while you were working with it. The pater, and you're not held liable. If it broke, if it's funny, if a stone from the heaven fell down and broke the vessel, you would have to pay. But if it broke while you're using the vessel for the purpose of what you borrowed it for, then you're not obligated to pay. Says the Gemara, very interesting. Ahu Gavra, there was this person, the Shoel Shinra Mechavre. He borrowed a cat from his friend. Because what's the purpose of a cat? Because he had mice in his store and he wanted the cat to chase away the mice or eat the mice. So what happened was, Chaver ale achbare ukatluhu. Wow. All the mice ganged up against this cat and killed the cat, right? So this is what the problem is. So now, does he have to pay for a brand new cat? Yosef Rav Ashi become a boiler. So Rav Ashi sat and was pondering this question. Ki hai gavnamai. What would you say about this story? Ki meisa machmas malachadami. Is it like the cat died because he was in the middle of the job? His job was supposed to kill the rats, but the rats and the mice ganged up against him. So he died while he was doing the job, and therefore the borrower of the cat is not liable. Or do you say no? This is not called dying by the work. He was supposed to kill the rats, not the other way around. So he wasn't doing any work. The cat wasn't doing any work, and therefore it was like considered as if the cat was killed in another manner, not while it was doing its job, and therefore the borrower has to pay. Amalei Rav Mordechai Ravashi. So Rav Mordechai said to Ravashi, "Hachi Amar Avima Mahagronya Mishmei de Rava." This is what Avima said in the name of Rava. Gavra de Nashe Katlu. A very interesting way to say this. If a man gets killed by a bunch of ladies, loidina v'loy dayana, then there's no din and there's no judgment. In other words, that we fault the guy. I mean, how do you get killed by a bunch of ladies? You're supposed to be an armed man, and you get killed by a bunch of ladies. So therefore, it's considered to be your fault, and therefore the cat over here, the cat did a poor job of being killed by the rats. It shouldn't have happened. It should have been the other way around, and therefore the person that borrowed the cat should not be held liable. Okay? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Rava said like this: Hi, Ikadi Amri. I'm sorry, Ikadi Amri. Ochel Achmri Tuva v'Chavel Ameis. The story was that the cat actually won the war. But he ate too many of the mice and he died. So Ravashi was questioning what would be the story in this situation. Is it considered Mesa Machmas Malacha or considered like an oinus? Because it died not because of killing it died not while it was eating the rats. It died because after it ate the rats, it ate too many rats, and therefore it died. Amalei Rav Mordechai Ravashi Hachim Aravi Miragraina Gavra de Nashay Katluhu Laidina Veledaina. As Rashi explains, a man, let's say there was a slave who's supposed to be mizana with a number of shivchos, maids for other people to get them pregnant, and he died doing too many be'ilos, too much relations. So how could he underestimated what he can do? Overestimate what he can do. So the fact that he died, it's really his considered fault, and therefore it's considered the fault of the slave, and therefore you don't have to pay for that slave. And so the same thing over here. This cat that ate up too many rats is considered to be Mesa Machmas Malacha. It died while it was doing its job, and it did its job very poorly. And therefore, it's a Mesa Machmas Malacha, and the person that borrowed the cat does not have to pay. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava said, Haiman deboya lemishlo midi mechavrei pater. If a man wants to exempt himself from ever have to be subject to paying as a borrower for any mishap that happens, we know, namely, let's tell the person that you're borrowing this, let's say you're borrowing something, a cow. As you're borrowing the cow, you should tell the person that's lending you the cow, Ashkiyamai, oh, by the way, can you pour me a drink of water? Now, the lender is actually working for the borrower, and therefore it's the Hava She'ila Babalim. It's like the lending happened with the owner still around there, and therefore you'll be exempt from paying because you have we know if the Baal of Ima, if the owner of the animal is working for the borrower, then the borrower is exempt from paying. The if he's a very smart lender, he should say, he should say to the guy, She'el Beresha, first borrow my cow, hold it for a day, and then V'hoda Ashkiach, and then I'll give you a drink of water. So then you're not considered Baal of Imai. Baal of Imai only applies when the guy is working for you at the time of the borrowing transaction. But if he works for you, starts working for you later on, that will not trigger the Baal of Imai exemption. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava said, Makri Dardaki Shetola Tabachi Umana, Saper Masa, the teacher of the children, the one that helps plant vineyards for the people in the city, Tabacha, or the Sheikhid for the city, Umana. What's Umana? I'm sorry, Umana is somebody who works for the city. Anyway, all these people, Saper Masa, or the person that gives haircuts for the city. So basically, they have permanent jobs working for the city. So whenever they borrow, they're working for. If they borrow from anyone in the city, technically they're working for them. So kulam beidin avidite, when they're working, actually, let's say they work 9 to 5. If they would borrow from somebody from the city at that time, is as if they're working for the owner, because by definition, working for the city is working for the inhabitants of the city, and therefore you're working for them. And so if you borrow from the inhabitants of the city, it's called she'ila babalim. Amalei Rabbanan l'Rava. So Rabbanan said to Rava, she'ilon mar. She'ilon mar. The rabbi said to Rava, the students of Rava said to him, "You're working for us, Rava, because you're our teacher, and therefore, anytime we're going to borrow something from you, we'll be exempt from paying you, einsim, because you're working for us, because you're our teacher." Ikbid Rava was very upset about that. Amalei lapku imamani kabayasi. You're trying to take money from me. Adarabba, just the opposite. Aten she'ilin li. Actually, I'm the teacher to you, but really, I don't work for you. You actually work for me by coming to my classroom. Why? Because the teacher's in charge. The ilu ana matzi ishtabute lechumas sechta lemesechta. I can decide what mesechta we are learning. And basically, I could learn the mesechta that I'm in the mood of learning, and I don't have to pay attention to the students. Aten loy mitzaisa leshtamuti. But you don't have to, you can't tell me what mesechta to learn. So therefore, who's working for who? The students are actually working for the rabbi, because the rabbi is the boss over here, can decide what the learning subject is, and the students have no say in that matter. So it's not that the rabbi is working for the students, it's the students that are working for the rabbi. And therefore, that's if they would borrow from the rabbi, it's not that the rabbi is working for them, and therefore they'll be held liable for einsim. Says the Gemara of Elohi, that's not true. We'll classify it. The rabbi of a classroom, when it comes to Yom Tov time, he could only learn topics related to Yom Tov, topics related to Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, whatever Yom Tov is. And he cannot say, I don't want to teach you stuff like that, because he's working for the students. That's true during those time of year. But inu shakal sheilu lei b'shar yomim. But the students work for the rabbi the rest of the year. When the rest of the year, the rabbi can decide what he can teach. So it's basically the students working for the rabbi and not the rabbi working for the students. Says the Gemara, Mereimar oige kudaisa bechazar. Mereima rented a mule from the people of Chazai. He rented a mule to the people of Chazai. Nafik daluye to unibahday. And then Merema saw that the people of Chazai were loading his mule, so he helped them load the mule. He rented them the mule, but he's helping them load the mule with packages. Pashaba, they were very negligent with this mule, and somehow the mule died. So now you can see what the problem is. Merema was working with the people who he rented the mule to. Asi l'kami de Rava, so they came for din Torah of Rava. Chayvinu, and Rava held that the people of Chazai have to pay for a new mule because they rented it and they were negligent about it, so they're liable to pay for a new mule. So Amar le Rabbana and the Rava, so the rabbis, the students of Rava, said to Rava, Pshia b'balamhi, although they were negligent, but the owner was working with them. And once this owner is involved in working with them, so then the renters don't have to pay for anything that happened. So Rava was very upset about this story. He felt he paskined wrong. It turned out the story was a little different. The Lemesa to Unehu Dinafek. Merema didn't help them. He just went out to view if they're going to overload his animal. So therefore, he wasn't really Baal of Imai. And therefore, Rava's psak was a good one, that he required the renters to pay Merema for a new mule because Merema wasn't really working for them. He was just observing how they are loading his animal. So the Gemara just finishes off. If you hope Sheila Babalim is Potter, therefore Rava was embarrassed because Rava said Yechayev, and it turns out that it could be if you hope Shia Babalim, if the Balim is working and there's a Pshia there, you're exempt from paying. Could be Rava was embarrassed that he made a mistake, that he paskined wrong. But according to the Mandi Yoma that says Pshia Babalim is Chayev, so then Rava had no reason to be embarrassed, because either way, even if the Baalim was there, even if Merema was working for them, Pshia Babalim still will, if there's a negligent involved, the renters still would be obligated to pay, despite the fact that the owner is working for them. So why was Rava so upset that he may have paskined wrong? Answers the Gemara, you're right. We have to say that they didn't do any Pshia. Ella ignuve ignav umesa kedarka be'ganav hava. That really what happened over here was that this was stolen from the renters, and then it died. It died of natural causes in the house of the Ganas. And Rava held them liable, because a soicher is chayiv in geneva and veda, and therefore he held them liable. The fact that it died in the house of the Ganav. Amr le ba'aban Rava, so geneva babalim who. It's Gneva Babalim. It's not Pshia Babalim, but the Balim was working for them. That's why Rava was upset. The Merema didn't really work for them. He was just observing how they're loading his animal, but he wasn't actually working with his renters, and therefore they were held liable to pay. We'll do this Mishnah and then we'll stop. Hashoyel. Now again, here's a question. You know that a shoyel is obligated to pay for oinsin. If it dies by natural cause, if you're a borrower, you have to pay. If you rented an animal and it dies of natural causes, you don't have to pay, right? So that's the difference between a shoyel and a soicha. So the Mishnah says, Hashoyel is a para. A guy initially borrows a para, but really the deal was, he's borrowing the cow for a half a day, and he's renting the cow for a half a day. So he's a partial borrower and a partial renter. Or he borrowed it, let's say, on one day, for Sunday, let's say, and it's rented for Monday. Let's say he rented one cow and borrowed another cow. He borrowed two cows. One he rented and one he borrowed, umesa. So let's take the last case. You had two cows, one borrowed and one rented. One of the cows died. Hamasha Oima, the lender said, She'ula Mesa, that the cow that I lent you died, and therefore you're obligated to pay me a brand new cow. In the second case, B'yom Shoisha She'ula Mesa, the day that the cow, it was one cow, and on Sunday it was borrowed. On Monday it's considered a rented. So the lender says that it died on a Sunday, and that was the day that you borrowed the cow. You're supposed to pay me a brand new cow. Or we go to Amar Beis. B'sha'a shahaisha she'ula mesa. B'sha'a shahaisha she'ula mesa. At the time, at the hour, it was considered a borrowed animal. That's when he died. So basically, the lender is saying, although you're a renter too, but when the mishap happens, you were a borrower, and therefore you're obligated to pay me a brand new cow. V'haloi ama. But the other person says, the other person says, I'm not sure if you're 100% right. Perhaps the animal died when it was rented, when I was renting it from you. And therefore, an animal that dies of natural causes when you rented it, I'm not liable to pay. So we have one guy is 100% and the other person is not sure. Chayev, you're obligated to pay because we have a bari, somebody who's clear on what he's talking about, and he's claiming against somebody who's not sure. The bari, the one who's 100% sure, wins out. We're going to see more about that in the Gemara. The renter says it died when it was rented. So the person, here's the opposite case. The one who took the animal says that when I rented to you, the animal died, or the day that I had it rented, it was died, and the animal that I rented is the one that died. Basically, he's saying, I know for sure that I'm not obligated to pay you a new animal. But the lender says, any day, I'm not sure. Perhaps it died on the time that it was actually lent to you. Potter, you're not obligated to pay because again, bari v'shema, bari adif, and this guy's so sure that I don't have to pay you money. And then we finish off the Mishnah. This one says it was the borrowed animal that died. And this one says, no, it was the rented animal that died. And I don't have to pay. So here, Yeshava HaSoicha, the renter pays, Sheschura, that Mesa, that it was the rented animal that died. And then he's exempt from paying. We'll see more about that in the Gemara. And here we have the final thing. This one, the lender says, I'm not sure when it died. Maybe the animal that you borrowed died, or the animal that you rented died, and he also doesn't know. So basically, they don't know if they owe each other money or not. Yachloiku, they split it down the middle. That if you have a moment you don't know, you owe each other money, split it down, pay half, and that's what you have to do. That's the Shita of Sumchis, and we're going to discuss more about that Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Okay.